there's a poem, and it says it's Nelson Mandela's 1994 inaugural speech, but I think somebody else wrote it. And it talks about who are you not to be great. And it seems to be like that's kind of what you guys are doing. Like there's people that have so much greatness even in the most horrible places, but people can be find these things, and that's from what I read. That's kind of what I took away, and it just reminded me of that poem.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. I mean, that's definitely kind of core to the mission is just this idea that there's these amazing people, every community, they're just kind of sprinkled around who have potential and abilities. And so that's kind of what the founding core belief of what we do is.
And I did see that most of our smart Rotarians that you're a Husky.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Oh, that was really a low blow, Jonas. That was
That
low.
was aimed directly at you, Leroy, because
That was really low.
yeah, well, Corey, I will give you the stage, and you can rub into the Cougars any way you want. But go for it. Let's tell us about it.
Oh, am I up?
Yeah.
You're up.
All right, let's do it. So just to introduce myself, my name is Corey Johnson. I spoke actually to your club. It must be 8 years ago when I was just starting off. I was but a boy. Since then, I mean, basically Imagine Scholar has existed for we started almost 11 years ago. So I'm originally from Yakima. So I grew up on the east side of the state, came over for university and did some business stuff, just some consulting out of university, and ended up in South Africa just on another project. And when I was there, I met just an amazing young man who was just motivated and kind and hardworking. And that was really the origin point of Imagine Scholar, was saying, this kid out here he's magical. I mean, he was just such a great young man, and nobody was really working with him. He wasn't going to fail school, so the schools more or less left him alone. They knew he'd make it through the system, but there was just so much raw potential there. And you just start thinking, you think, well, how much is squandered by him not reaching his actual potential? How much is there above what he could actually really do? And so our core beliefs at Imagine Scholar are really formed on, the main one I just said is that talent and the ability to make an impact is evenly distributed everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you're in Snoqualmie Valley, if you're in rural South Africa, you're in Guatemala. There are really, really dynamic minds that at the same rate that are sprinkled in all of those communities. But more so than that it's not just about talent. It's about the ability to make an impact. I think sometimes when we think about ourselves and how we're going to move the world forward, I think sometimes what we do is we skim off the, kind of the supposed cream of the crop, and we say, oh, we were able to get these kids into these fancy institutions. But I think where we actually make maybe the biggest mistake is we don't realize that everyone has an ability to make an impact. Everybody has the ability to make, a positive, and it doesn't always have to be in glorious or glamorous ways. So what we've tried to do is kind of change the equation and say, it's not really about success. Our program, success is great. We're very happy if our students, are able to go off to university and be successful, but that isn't really what's going to change or move the world forward. What's going to change the world is, and change communities and change individual people's lives, is this willingness to make, an impact and to really direct our students towards that idea that, the goal is not how much money you can make or where you go to school. The goal is how much of an impact can you make in the people's whose lives you touch. So, when I think about what our mission is, it's very easy to talk to Rotarians, and what we're really trying to do is we're trying to build, an incredible Rotary club from the ground up. So if you say, our community is about 300,000 people. So what we're trying to do is say, how many really transformational leaders do you need to make a true change in that community? So right now we have about 170 people, young people who've been part of our program. But when you think about how many of those people going out into the community oriented toward change do you need to really make, long-term sustainable change? So what we do, our program is a very intensive out-of-school support program. So our students go to full-time school. So they go to school 6 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and then they come to us 25 hours a week on top of that. So they come 2 hours after school, they come for 8 hours every Saturday, and then 2 to 8 hours every Sunday, 50 weeks of the year. So it is an incredible level of commitment. And the thing is, this isn't some kind of sadistic program where we created, we used to be a 4 hour a week program. I think when I actually first came to your club, I think we used to, yeah, we were 4 hours a week. And what we've done is we do a census with our students and we say, every 6 months we say, is there, should we do a little more? Should we do a little less? And, based on the students just kind of pushing and their willingness, we do this, amazingly intense program. Our selection process is, I think, one of the things that makes our program different. We're not looking for the smartest. We're not looking for the most articulate or the most charismatic. What we're looking for is really two things. Who is willing to work really hard? The ability to and the willingness to want to work hard is something that, again, I think it's hard to overstate just how important that is for a young person. So we have an 8-month application process that is a whole year of curriculum. So our kids go through this whole very difficult year, and a lot of them will quit. It's very self-selecting. But the kids who want to be part of it will make it to the end of this process. And then the second piece is we have a character filter. So we're really looking for who's kind, who treats people with respect, who doesn't use their intelligence to belittle other people, who can be part of a really positive community. So at the end, you have this distilled group of young people. We start in 8th grade who are incredibly motivated, but also just good people. So you create this climate and this approach which, students feel they can be vulnerable. They feel supported. And then what we actually do with them, our motto is we're not trying to create great 16-year-olds. We're trying to create really extraordinary 30-year-olds. And so everything we do is built around this idea of what kind of skills do you need to be a really dynamic, impactful 30-year-old? So we don't do any school subjects. We're not doing math or physics or life science. We're really saying, what are the traits we want you to have kind of when you're able to really, become this kind of impactful person. So, we do things like, how do you, we do a lot about like, how do you organize your life? How do you set priorities? How do you, lay out a planner for your week? A lot of it is on relationships. One thing we talk about a lot is, one of the easiest ways to make an impact, especially as a young person, is actually just treating, your parents kindly. It's an amazing, anyone who has kids, the ability to be, treat your parents, your grandparents, those are relationships that you can work on as a young person. You can learn to be, you hate to say strategic, but in some ways, to be, to actually make it part of your mission. Like part of your impact journey is impacting the people's lives around you that you touch. It's being a good friend. It's being a good son or daughter. It's being kind and grateful to your teachers, so there's kind of a core ethos of character, but we also teach a lot of practical skills. I mean, all of our students understand financial literacy. They understand how stock markets work. They understand, the basic beginning point of our program in grade 9 is every student understands cognition. So they understand how their own brain works, how their own hardware and software work. And the goal for that is, to take that kind of, background information and realize that you are a malleable person, that you can change, that the world, you're not, that you're not smart or you're not dumb, you are where you are, but there is this growth mindset that you can change. The other big thing that we focus on, and this is something that there's a quote I love by somebody named, or a marketing guy named Seth Godin, but it's about education, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but it goes something like, everybody who is great, every great artist, every great teacher, every great, musician, every great parent, somewhere along the way had to choose to be great. They had to make a conscious choice. And one of the challenges with education, and a lot of good education actually is the goal is actually to make it really easy. We pave these beautiful, perfect paths for students. And we say, if you just do the right things, you'll get to go to the good middle school. And if you do the right things there, you'll get to go to the good high school, which will get you into the good university, which will get you into the good, kind of first job. But what we don't teach is that really what we need young people to be able to do is to fail. You need to be able to be bold, to do things that are outside of your comfort zone, to challenge yourself. And so a lot of what our program really is to create adversity and to allow students to fail gracefully. It's to really push them, to say, life is going to be a lot more like a jungle than really like a paved path. So how do we teach you to work in broken systems? So, one of the reasons for, or kind of the background of, we keep all of our students in the schools they come from, which is some of the lowest performing schools in the entire African continent. And the idea is that if you can teach them to be successful in a broken system, in a system that has a lot of fundamental challenges, then they're going to really thrive when they get into good systems, or they'll be able to thrive in the future when they're in, difficult systems. So I think the idea of normalizing failure is a really core place. And what we try to do is, we're coaching each student. So, again, the way in which we do a lot on, like, critical thinking projects. So it's everything from, again, I'm trying to create better relationships with my teachers, to our bathroom outside, stinks. How do we change that? So it's not just hypothetical things. It's real things that they're working on. It's starting small businesses and having those businesses fail, and then doing a post-mortem and say, why did the business fail? How would you do it again? And just kind of teaching them to dust themselves off and try again. One of the things, with a lot of programs like ours that work with students, especially students coming from very poor backgrounds, there's a real obsession with success. A lot of times you'll say, if the benchmark or the metrics or how we define ourselves as successful is, did we get a certain number of kids in university, or, did we get, a certain amount of students employed? And I think the normal equation is, let's put all the emphasis on success. And then maybe as like a byproduct, the student might be happy or healthy or, impactful. But that's kind of a side note. I think for us, we've tried to reverse that equation. We've said we're going to put a lot of emphasis on being happy and being healthy and being impactful. And then our bet was that success will be a byproduct, that success will come from you setting yourself up with a purpose, with something you're really working towards, something you're driving towards. The final piece is, we're really into the idea of entrepreneurship, of helping young people start projects, of actually creating things. One, because it's a great learning process. It's a wonderful critical thinking project to create something, especially if it fails or succeeds. There's a lot of lessons from that. But the reality is we want, our real vision is we want to help these students make change in their community. And that's going to be really hard to do through traditional measures. You're going to have to be entrepreneurial. You're going to have to be creative. So the students come to us 25 hours a week, and because of this level of commitment, our students have been very traditionally successful. So at this point, every student in our program has graduated from high school. Every student has been admitted into university, and then at this point, every student has graduated from university. So who has started and finished. So we have 100% throughput of students going through university, and I think a lot of that, our area of students who start university, only 15% will graduate. So, of students who will step foot in a university classroom, only 15% will graduate. The reason our students have been so successful, I think really is because they've made a commitment to themselves. Our program, we're in a very, very poor area in rural South Africa, and for our students, this is really a lifeline. They take it really serious, and we don't give them anything. So there's nothing that comes with the program. So you join our program, you don't get a T-shirt. You don't get any kind of, certificate at the end. The only thing you get is what you put in your head. And there's something really magical with a young person when they make a commitment that says, hey, I'm really committed to my own growth, and I see the intrinsic value of pushing myself and trying to grow. And I think that parlays into success in university, success in careers. We've had a lot of, anyone who's ever hired one of our students, the first thing they'll say is, they're just really good people and they work hard, and, they're the kind of people you're looking for. So, but those kind of immediate pieces of success of like university and jobs, as I said, those aren't really our purpose. Our purpose is to make change in this community, is to say, how do you make fundamental change in an area that has so many struggles? Our community has 85% unemployment. So, and again, that was pre-COVID. I have no idea what unemployment's going to be once I'm allowed to go back. So, 85% unemployment. It has 40 2% of people in the area are HIV positive. It's the highest rate in the world. So you think about, 42% of adults are HIV positive. You have 85% unemployment, and what it creates really is a sense of hopelessness. You have young people in a community that say, like there's no path out. Most of our students don't know, many of our students don't know anyone who's been employed formally, let alone somebody who'd been to university. So our goal is to say, right now we have 170 people in our program. We're about 10 years in. In the next 10 years, we should have about probably 700 young people that have come through this program. So these are 700 people from this community who are committed, who are understanding of the challenges, who have a nuanced, like understanding of like what solutions really fit that context. And, just to give a tangible example, so our local hospital, fully outfitted, would need 32 doctors. So 32 doctors would be fully outfitted. Right now it has about 18 doctors. Of those doctors, only one of them is from the local community. So the rest of them are either from, Cape Town or Johannesburg. They're there for a 2-year service contract that you need to do in the government hospitals, or they're from Europe or the US and they're coming there for like a 2-year ComServe. Over the next, but they don't speak the local language, they don't understand the context. Over the next 10 years, we should have enough doctors alone that have come through our program, that are able to fill that hospital. But more than just like filling slots in a hospital, the idea is that these are young people from the age of 13 every day, for 6 days a week, for 50 weeks a year, have been talking about and planning about how they're going to make an impact. And, our doctors who are planning or in medical school now, their goal is to come back to the local hospital, but it's not just to be there, it's to change it. It's to, start to become these like problem solvers who are looking at this community and saying like, how do we actually make a change? One of our kind of pieces, or one of the things where our goal in the next 10 years is to have a program that is completely also turned over to students. So, currently our board of directors in the local organization is all alumni. Right now we have our first alumni staff member who's back working at the organization. And the idea is in the next 3 to 5 years, we should have 10 alumni who are already committed to come back. So our entire staff will be made up of alumni who've come through this process, who are, who really take the reins and run with it. So you have alumni board, you have an alumni staff, and then the final piece is you have, alumni who are actually, like the funding network. So instead of needing to reach out for funding, internationally, you have this group of incredibly successful young people who start to work at corporates, who start companies, and they then become the funding channel and the network that builds this, truly like, genuinely sustainable organization. So, we've always really worked on trying to keep costs really low. And, but I think the success of our program will really be known in the next 10 years because, what these students do with this education, do they fill a slot or do they really make change? And I've been amazed at how many of our students are already doing things that are, just blow me away. We have one of our president of our board of directors is an alumni from our first class. So I think she's just turned 23. She's currently studying to get her PhD. She has a young child, and she recently reached out to me and said, hey, Corey, my son is in a, this amazing preschool where they're using just all this innovative ways of, teaching young kids, and, early childhood development is one of her passions. And she said, I think I'm going to try to start a preschool in my community. And so she wrote up a business plan, she worked on buying the property, and she's currently in the works of building, this preschool for kids in her community while, attending full-time school, working full-time, and also raising a kid. And it's those kind of things that you look at and say, that's really what we're aiming for. That's the goal, is how do you help young people, realize that making a difference is, it's an incredibly rewarding piece, and you're pushing against a cultural narrative that's saying, hey, individual success is all that matters. But I've been blown away by the sense of community that our young people are looking at and saying, hey, we actually, there's a real sense of belief that we can fundamentally change this community. That, the Nkamazi, which is the region we're in, doesn't have to be this, kind of blight or this thing to get away from, that it can be something that young people can come back to. And so that's really what we're doing. Again, I like to use the example of trying to build an enormous, powerful Rotary Club kind of from the ground up. We're 10 years in, they're almost 11 years now. But the end goal really is this ability to just turn over this program and have something that's there permanently. So obviously we would we're kind of born out of Rotary. I've been a Rotarian for 7 years. But there's been so many Rotarians that have just got excited by what we've done, and individuals who've been excited, clubs that have supported us. So if anybody, kind of hears about what we do and would love to be involved, I mean, we're a very, very small program. So we'd be very excited to get some more people involved. But I don't know time-wise, but I'm very happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. No stress.
So I have a question, I
Bueller?
guess.
Can you hear me, Corey?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. My question is what type of level of service that are things that we can do to help or individually? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, we've had, I've been amazed at how many ways we found for Rotarians to connect. I mean, we've had Rotarians be guest speakers on our career days, so they will do it like what used to do Skype and now Zoom, to check in there. I mean, our biggest form of funding is just individual student sponsors. I mean, so it's individuals who, sponsor a student, either partial or full. It's $100 a month to fully sponsor a student in our program. So there's financial sponsorship. We have a lot of students this year. Half of our students receive full university scholarships to come over to the United States on full scholarship. So some of them, we've had Rotarians have been the home stays and the transition points. So one of our students is going to Whitman. So there's a lot of things like that just come up. And so, we have this amazing network of people wherever we are, where people have been able to kind of step in. But those would be the big ones.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
do you network with the local clubs when they get to a Rotary? Or whenever they get accepted to a university stateside, or even
Yeah.
not stateside, do you like automatically contact that local Rotary club?
Yeah, we've had a lot of support from South African Rotaries, just kind of coming in and, again, helping with jobs and helping with training. But we're just actually, that's a point we've just actually been thinking about is some of our students, he actually came up with the idea. One of them is in Cleveland, and he said, hey, do you think because he'd done a few Rotary speeches with me when he was in Yakima, and he just was like, hey, should I reach out to this club and go visit? So yeah, we're kind of in the works of, they're spread all over the country. We have a couple in Missouri, one in Philadelphia, one in Cleveland, one in Walla Walla. So we're actually just starting to work on that plan. But yeah, that's kind of, we've had a really good, we have kind of a Rotary network in kind of the Northwest where I'm from, and then over on the Northeast, but we're just starting to kind of spread out the tentacles a little bit.
Hey, Corey, I got a question for you, and the economics of these things always interest me.
Yeah.
And what is the family dynamic with the folks that you're working with? No matter your race, but most impoverished folks in the United States come from a single parent household. Is the family unit more together over there, or is it?
It's kind of it's a little bit different dynamic because of HIV. So our students' parents were one of the first generations really hard hit. So our level of, I would say the normal family dynamic is really hard to place. I would say, you kind of think of it there's a lot of our students who live with a grandparent. I mean, that's a very, very common family unit where both parents unfortunately have passed away. We do have, I would say you lean more single mothers than single fathers, but our amount of students with both parents is, I would say it's not over 50%. Our average student, we did this calculation a few years back, but it was something around, our normal student, kind of median student lives on about $50 a month, their family. So, and South Africa is it's not a third world country, it's relatively expensive. I mean, so these kids are living on, social grants, and the normal social grant will be about $20, and, maybe they'll be able to sell some fruit on the side. So, I mean, really, really, very, very low level. And again, that's the median. I mean, there's definitely kids who live on, $20 a month with a grandparent and two other siblings. So, our program has, especially during COVID, our program has had to, in some ways, kind of shift our role. I mean, we've been doing digital curriculum, and we're still operating and going to students, but we've kind of had to come in and say, hey, we've got to help out, the kind of a full service, which we were very fortunate to be able to do.
Now, the city that you're working in, I mean, South Africa, like you said, it's very advanced country and very expensive. And I know like Cape Town's like San Francisco,
Yeah.
and Johannesburg is not only horrible rates of AIDS, but the highest murder rate in the world, or used to be.
Mhm.
Or where are you? Are you down by Durban or?
So we're about 4.5 hours east, but almost due east of Johannesburg, just north of the country of Swaziland, or which is now known as Eswatini, and we're a little bit just to the west of Mozambique. And then if you've ever been to South Africa, Kruger National Park is a big, very famous national park. We're right south of that, so we're in a very rural community. I mean, one of the benefits of rural communities, obviously resource-wise, we really struggle. But it doesn't have nearly the crime rates and some of the challenges of the city. Because I mean, South African cities definitely. I mean, there is definitely. I mean, some Johannesburg and Cape Town both actually. I mean, have very high crime rates. A lot of just incredibly extreme income inequality, some of the highest in the world. So the rural community, we're so poor that we don't really. In some ways, it has a simpler way. But I mean, again, it doesn't mean there's not a lot of challenges.
I know you said you have 100% going to university, I believe.
Yeah.
Are there any trade options? Like, is that ever presented as an option that like trade or certificate style work could have just as much of an impact?
Yeah, so we actually, I mean, I always say university, but it's probably, they have in South Africa, they have universities and they have technicals. And technicals, again, have things like electrician, pipe fitting. And we've definitely had students go that route. But to be honest, I think that we're doing an expansion right now, and there's a huge push for us that university. I'm not an evangelist for university. I actually think that for a lot of young people, getting into a trade is is a great option. So we have a couple students who've done electrical, and I have one student who's doing plumbing right now. But no, I always say those stats because, I mean, in some ways, I think you as a nonprofit are supposed to, kind of have stats you say, but we never push any kids to go to university. I'm a big believer that young people should just follow what really interests them. And there's a lot of needs out there. But yeah, that's something, especially with our new expansion program, we've been really looking into apprenticeship programs. Like there's a local plumber in the area who's offered to maybe take some of our students on. So we're looking at auxiliary routes for higher education for sure. Yeah, I think that's actually one of the challenges of a lot of kind of programs similar to ours is that there's kind of only one path, and I think we've really tried to kind of push against the grain and say you can, we use the term of we really try to shoot for excellence, but it's like excellence doesn't mean getting great scores in school. Like excellence really just means you do a really great job at whatever you are, and there's really excellent people who are, waiters at restaurants, and there's really excellent musicians, and there's, really excellent stay-at-home parents. And I think so what we're trying to do is say, whatever you do, really make sure you hold yourself to an extreme, really hold yourself to excellence, but then also try to make an impact with whatever you do and try to broaden what that scope is of how someone makes an impact and try to make it more open-ended where a lot of people can feel like they're part of it, and it's not this really narrow band that says, hey, we're only looking for this kind of impact or this kind of success story.
Well, that's an awesome story. Leroy, did you have a question? I thought you had piped in earlier. Okay.
No, I did not. It was not me.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have any questions for Corey? Corey, thank you. That's
Yeah, thank you. That was really good to know about.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity. And like I said, I mean, as we kind of are in this weird COVID time, I'm stuck in the U.S., so I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll have some space and I'll try to meet out with some clubs. And, again, I know that there's so many great projects out there, but if this is something that speaks to you, I mean, like I said, we're an incredibly small program, so, you could make a pretty big impact. So I'll send over the information to the club, and like I said, reach out and, I mean, I've been blown away by how many interesting ways people find to get involved. So if this is something that excites you, but thanks again so much for the opportunity to speak, and yeah, for all the good work you do.
Yeah, thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
No one's ever actually clapped before. Thanks.
Oh, we're giving you virtual claps.
Perfect.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So it's called the Runs Imagine Scholar, right?
It's just called the Imagine Scholars.
Imagine Scholars. Yeah.
Yeah, just Imagine Scholar. And like I said, I'll send over all the information just to the club. So if someone would be willing to share it around, but I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll make sure everybody gets their copy. And yeah, it's South Africa is on my bucket list. It has been for about 20 years, and I haven't made it yet, but I know a lot about it from reading and stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I'll say is, you hear a lot of the bad stats, and I hope I didn't scare you away, but I mean, I've lived there for almost 11 years, and it is a wonderful place. And again, like if you're in the wrong part of Johannesburg, it can be a rough place. But I would recommend it the number one place I've ever been if you have a couple weeks to come on vacation. And Cape Town is, besides being one of the most beautiful wine regions on earth, it's also just an amazingly aesthetically just marvelous place. So I fully endorse it. And if anyone wants to come visit, our program's much cooler than my little speech, I promise.
can you take the train? Don't they have that train from Johannesburg to Cape Town that goes to the wine region? Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been on it, but I've heard it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Very cool. Has anybody else been to South Africa?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Rotary trip.
Nope, not
Rotary
yet.
trip
Mhm.
this weekend. All right, Corey. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good
Yeah,
rest of the
thank
meeting.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.